Thanks, everyone. My name is David Marx. Some of you look real familiar. You were here yesterday. Thank you so much for coming back. Yesterday I was here and I talked about Adobe Photoshop Lightroom, which is something I teach and use every day, the traditional desktop computer-based app. And I hope yesterday's lecture, for those who are here, was useful, informative. Today I thought I would do something a little different. Today, I want to play with some of these toys because I think that we live at a really interesting time in photography. We're all walking around now with what are becoming really good cameras in our pockets. I mean, literally everywhere I go, I have at this point a pretty high megapixel, pretty powerful camera. And with our mobile devices, we can shoot, we can edit, and we can share. And it's those, say, three parts of the equation that I really want to show off today. So I have two apps in mind for you today. I have this app called Snapseed. It's from Google. It's completely free. And I thought I would show it for just a little bit first. Out of curiosity, is anybody using Snapseed? Oh, good. Awesome. Then I've got the right audience. And then I also thought I would show off Adobe Photoshop Lightroom for mobile. They make an app-specific version. It's semi-free. I'll explain what semi means in a little while. It's a little more complicated. It's also very cutting edge. Now, to do this, I'm going to show on an Android tablet, on an iPad, and on my computer. So I'm really hoping that all three of these devices will play nicely together and with the video. So if things go wrong, if you can't see, if something freezes, please let me know, because I could easily sit here and talk to my iPad for an hour and never look up. So just for a little shameless self-promotion, my name's David Marx. You'll find my own website, davidmarx.com. I do indeed teach workshops. I have one coming up in 2 months, my next trip east. I have a lovely Coast of Maine workshop, super fun. If you're looking for me on social media, we were joking about Facebook before the broadcast started. You won't find me there, but you will find me, of course, on Instagram. I'm at David Marx Photo. If you're on Google+, you'll find me there, on Twitter, on YouTube, on all of these. But the main place, if you want to learn more to find me, is this website that I've been building for a year or so called FocusPhotoSchool.com. And this is my video tutorials, nothing but videos here, nothing but articles. And at this website, you'll find I have 150 some Lightroom videos. I try and put out one a week. I've branched out to teaching the Snapseed program. So I have lots of Snapseed videos, on and on and on. Well, let me just pop over, since Snapseed's where we're headed. Let me just open up another window a second here. Oh my goodness. So the first app I thought I would show off is this one called Snapseed. And I don't know why Google is making this product. It doesn't seem to have any advertising. It's completely free on both Android and iOS. So on all the common platforms. It has no advertising, it costs nothing, and I think it does some really cool things for us as mobile photographers. So hopefully at this point, what you're seeing is the screen of my Android tablet. And so this could be Android, could be iOS, could be your phone, could be your tablet. What I've gotten here are some photos. Photos that, for the most part, I shot with my cell phone. So I clicked a photo, and now I want to do something to make that photo better. Now, this Snapseed app, I like to think of it as sort of a Photoshop for my fingertips. It does some really amazing stuff, and for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. But there's more going on here than you might see at first. So I'm going to launch the app. Now, if all goes well, when I touch the screen, there should be a little light gray dot. If you want to think of that as like the mouse or the cursor, that's basically what I'm trying to show there. And that's my fingertip. So one dot would be one finger. Two dots would be a two-finger kind of move, two-finger tap. And I'm hoping, especially for folks who are watching this, say, on YouTube, it's really hard sometimes to see what somebody's doing on their mobile screen. But in Snapseed, the first button, the one we'll start with, is obviously the open button. And Snapseed does no indexing, no cataloging. When we talk Lightroom Mobile, we'll talk all about syncing and cataloging and sharing. Snapseed's much simpler. Snapseed's a traditional open, whatever it is you want to work on. And so if I pick a photo like this one, this is one of the lighthouses that I'll take folks to in a couple weeks when I'm up in Maine. This beautiful lighthouse, I shot this with my phone. So this is just a cell phone image. I'm pretty impressed with the image quality that this thing can deliver. I mean, I wouldn't print this, billboard size. I certainly don't think it's the greatest lighthouse photo ever, but it's not terrible. But I think it could be better. It could stand to be a little brighter, a little more colorful, the kind of stuff that we would traditionally do at home, sitting in the computer in Photoshop. But let's see if we can do it, say, with our fingertips. So in Snapseed, the button that's the most important is this little pencil guy. It's the Tools and Filters menu. When I tap it, our options will appear. Think of each one of these little boxes as a different type of activity or a different zone. And just like in, say, Lightroom, where we have the basic panel, in Snapseed, we start often in this Tune Image grouping. Now, when Tune Image appears, at first, you'll just see a brightness slider. And obviously, if I swipe my finger to the right, I can push that slider over, make things brighter. If I pull my finger to the left, and I'm just pushing one finger against the screen and moving right to left, things get darker. Now, if I've made this way too dark, and I want to undo that, I could drag the slider all the way back up. But the first lesson I want to teach you here is, if you've made a mistake, and I'll call this a mistake, all you got to do is double tap on that word. So 2 taps with my finger real quick sets it back to 0. Now, nothing that we're doing in here is set in stone. So even if I had made this look awful, and I had forgotten the double tap, I could either hit that little X in the bottom left corner to cancel all the changes I would have made, or there is an undo button. So what I'm hoping to start by telling you is, don't panic. Feel free to experiment in here. Try anything, try everything. Swipe up, swipe down, swipe right, swipe left. You can always undo, always cancel, always revert. And sort of to speak bigger picture, I love the idea that this is a non-destructive editor, that we don't get just one try, we get a number of tries to figure out what look do I want for that photo. Well, in here, I'm going to double tap again on brightness, there's actually a whole set of tools. And you'll find those tools either by tapping on the word adjust down there at the bottom, or if you swipe your finger vertical on the screen, rather than right to left, a menu will appear. And in this menu, for a landscape type photo, and yesterday I talked basically nonstop about landscape photography, what I like to do, landscape and travel stuff. There's a slider in here called Ambience. And the Ambience is sort of a saturation boost, makes our colors more saturated. And it does some interesting things to the contrast. It tries to sort of lighten and darken at the same time. So if I swipe this way, I can add saturation, and I'll fill light into those dark shadows all in one move. Now, there's a little button in the upper right, just below the clock up there. That's our before-after symbol. And that symbol is becoming somewhat standard in mobile imaging editing apps. We'll see the same little square with a line through it in a few minutes when we get to Lightroom Mobile. If I press and hold there, you'll see the photo before I slid that slider, after, with the slider. And with just one slider, that's a better mobile photo to me, right? It's more colorful, it's got more even lighting. Now I could keep going in here. I could say, bring the highlights down if I wanted. I could bring the shadows up further. There's lots of controls, but I think you get the idea. I hope you get the idea that we can experiment in this panel, and for a landscape type photo, that ambience control, pretty powerful stuff. So let's say I love what I've got on the screen now. I'll hit the little check mark in the bottom right corner to commit these changes, to say, yeah, this is the look I want. Once I've committed them, we'll return to the home screen, only now we're seeing the improved image. Now there is a before and after view in here, but we don't have that little button to see it. The before and after view is just hold one finger against the screen. Snapseed will show you what the original file you open looked like. When you let go, there's the, say, current state of the file. Now if you love this, what I have to say here is you got to save your work. Like Photoshop, like Microsoft Word, like most programs, when it's good, don't forget to save. And in both the Android and iOS, the little save button is this arrow, the down arrow, in the upper left. So I'll hit save, I'll go save a copy, and that save a copy I also love, because Snapseed didn't overwrite my original file, it made a new file. So I can experiment, I can save a copy. If I decide down the road that what I did was terrible when I sober up, I can delete the copy, but not the actual photo that my cell phone shot. Pretty easy? Well, let's go to just some other tools in here, because as a mobile image editor that costs nothing, I think there's some amazing stuff hiding beneath the surface. Let me go open. Like one of the most common problems for me shooting with my cell phone is the white balance. Now, I live in Montana, so for me this is a fairly typical, we have a lot of winter, we have a lot of cow fields. And I shot this out early one morning walking the dog. It is a cold blue morning, but that's like a purple blue to me. It's the white balance on the cell phone is not nearly as good as the white balance, say, on a DSLR. So to improve it, I'm not going to claim great, but to improve it, I'll go to that Tools and Filters button again. And Snapseed has a specific white balance panel, if you will. So I'll go to white balance. And much like Lightroom or Photoshop, we have our auto option. I'll try auto. It's okay. We have a color picker where if I had like a white card, like B&H sells these lovely white balancing, there's a whole department of white balance. On your way out, pass through the white balance department. If I'd photographed one of these, I could use that eyedropper to set a really accurate white balance. But in this case, I'm just going to go with the adjust button, where I have a temperature and a tint slider. Just like Lightroom, temperature is going to be the amount of yellow or the amount of blue light that gets added to the file. And tint is going to be the amount of purple, magenta, or the amount of green that gets added. So let me go back to, say, the auto. Auto looked pretty good, but maybe a little too warm to me. And when I hit auto, what it did is it set a temperature and tint that it thinks looks right for the scene. I'm just going to cool that temperature down a little bit, something about like this. Again, I'll hit the before and after button. I'll press and hold. See how purple that sunrise looks? After, more accurate, more believable cold morning. So let's say I love it. I hit commit. That was easy, right? For a cell phone shot to have better white balance for free with just my fingertips, I'm pretty psyched. Now I should save my work here. I absolutely should. But in the interest of time, I think once you've seen the save button, save a copy, there's nothing else I have to teach you there. Save your work if you've made it look better. So let's go to something a little more sophisticated in here. This is a photo of my niece, one of my nieces, and she's a happy baby, really pleased with the portrait, but there's a scratch on her face. She had kind of raked her nails over, little kids, they cut themselves, they scratch themselves all the time. These scratches on her cheeks, they don't really help the portrait. Now to zoom in here, I need to teach you a new sort of move. The move is this pinch push with 2 fingers against the screen. And I find it easiest to do with, say, thumb and forefinger. So if I push both against the screen and then spread them out, that tells Snapseed to zoom in. When I bring them back, it tells it to zoom back out. Once you've zoomed in, you get a little navigator window down there in the bottom corner. And if you put your finger in that window, you can move around the photo. Anyway, so here's these scratches on her face. I don't want those scratches. They don't help the portrait. So I'll go to that tune image, that Tools and Filters again, and I'll come to the one that says healing. Much like Photoshop, we have a healing brush, if you will, in here. Now, I don't get to tell it what to copy, and we're going to copy pixels and paste them, but I do get to tell it where to paste. And all I've got to do is swipe over that scratch, and Snapseed will decide to copy something skin-colored and paste it over the areas I paint. Now, in this case, it didn't help, right? Now she's growing part of a beard. So fortunately, there's an undo button right down there at the bottom. Let me undo that. For more accuracy, I'm going to zoom in again, and I'm just going to do a smaller swipe. And if I wanted to, I could say zoom back out and do more cleanup. But here, this is before, 2 little scratches on her face, after, gone. Now, obviously, for most of us, you're like, yeah, I can do that in Photoshop. But I'm going to say, yes, you can, but you have to take your mobile photo, load it into your computer, sit down at the computer, open up Photoshop, work in Photoshop, save the file, put it back on your mobile device. That's a lot of work for something that I can do in almost no time. So I'll say this one's good. Okay, so we have most of our sort of basic image editing, removing things, white balance, tune image. One of the common problems that I run into shooting with my cell phone is that all of our cell phones, at least right now, they're all using wide-angle lenses. They all have some 15, 18-ish millimeter equivalent lens. So everything's a little bowed and distorted. So here, I'm going to show a photo of New York. Not the real New York, the plastic one, right? But you can see in this one, you see how the Vegas casino is like falling over in vertical space? That's the problem with shooting architecture, one of the problems with shooting architecture with our cell phone, right? That bowing of the wide-angle lens gives us this sort of distortion. Obviously, again, I could bring this into the computer to fix it, but that's a lot of work. So I'm going to go to my tools and filters, and I'm going to go to the one that says perspective. Now, if you're playing along on an iOS device, iPhone, iPad, it's going to say transform, I believe in here. For the most part, the app on both platforms is identical. But for some reason here, the button is labeled a little different. And when we get into that button, what you see on the iOS version will also be slightly different. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to show off what happens in here. When I go to this tilt control, it's a little different there. When I pull my finger down, see how I'm changing the perspective on this photo? Let's change it down so things are fairly straight. And then I might go and rotate this one just a tiny bit, something about like that. Now let me hit my before and after again. That's what the cell phone saw, falling over buildings. That's what I want you to see. But there's a catch. There's a problem here. As we bow and warp the image, it's no longer rectangular. And that's that white space that you're seeing around the edges. So if I'm going to use this tool, what I probably have to do is say, this is the three-dimensional look I want, the change in perspective. And now I need to get rid of all that extra white space. Oh dear, that's better than nothing. All right, well, let's get to some really cool, fun stuff in here. One of the things that's in this program that I think is just amazing is some of its really sophisticated portrait retouching abilities. So let me take this photo here of a friend, and I was able to get him to sit in that field of flowers, but I was not able to get him to smile. Right? He was a willing enough model, but not a paid professional. So I really wish he looked happier. He just doesn't have the thrilled to have his picture taken expression. So I'm going to go to the bottom of the filters menu, and I'm going to go to this one called Pose. And what Snapseed is going to do is it's going to study his face, and it's going to build a map so that now when I slide my finger around the screen, I can reposition his face, and I can make him say, look right into the camera. That's crazy, right? We have that ability in Photoshop. It's called puppet warp or face liquefy, but it's way complicated. It's not just slide your finger around kind of easy. Now, I also wish he would smile a little. So I'm going to tap on that adjust button, I'm going to come down to smile, and I'm going to have it bend his lips and chin for us. All right, that's just rad, right? Like, this app costs nothing. I'm playing with my fingertips, and I now have a smiling model. How Google is doing this, how they're mapping his face and moving his beard, his facial structure, I don't know. That's just jaw-dropping to me. There's also a, say, focal length option where I can make his face narrower or wider. I can change that stuff around. Let's say I'm happy here, though. I'm going to commit that change. And now I'm going to go back in there again to this Face Enhance option. And with Face Enhance, again, it's going to detect his face. And I'm going to use this option called Spotlight that I think is pretty elegant. What Spotlight's going to do is it's going to lighten up his face and simultaneously darken the background. It's going to, if you will, vignette a little, but it's going to target the vignetting around his head. You'll see his face gets lighter. I'm going to totally overdo it. Face gets lighter, rest of the photo gets darker. Now, obviously overdone here. We don't need that much lightening. But how about a little bit more lightening? Let me zoom in considerably. One of the other options in here is what they call eye clarity, sharpness and saturation in the eyes. So I'm going to bump up the eye clarity. Again, let me overdo it. See how over-sharpened? But this is detecting his eyes for me. I'm not masking. I'm not painting. I'm letting the app decide where are the eyes. That is so cool to me. This is really sophisticated portrait retouching. And if you're wondering, this is not a cell phone photo. This is one from my Canon DSLR that I loaded into my Android tablet, because for what I just did, to go from here to there, a happy model with, a good smile, would take me hours in Photoshop. I could do it, but I could never do it live in front of an audience like this. That's some sophisticated stuff. Let me show you one more, then I promise I'll switch to Lightroom. Let me open up another photo. So there's a company, the company is Nik, Nik Software, and Google bought them a couple years ago. Now they make a suite of desktop programs, and those desktop programs may or may not last much longer. Doesn't seem like Google's all that interested in continuing that technology. But some of what they bought from Nik is now in Snapseed. And the place we can see it the most is when we go to, say, the black and white filter in here. When I go to the black and white filter, and I go to the color picker, I get the chance to convert from color to black and white, but rather than just desaturating, I can say things that were, say, red, make them lighter. Things that were the opposite of red, make them darker. For those who are used to playing with this, this is Silver Effects Pro, right, beneath the surface. This is that color filtering module in Silver Effects. They bought it and put it in the mobile app. So on this photo, I'm going to go through a bunch of these different colored filters. Each gives me a different black and white look. And the one I think that looks the best on this photo is, say, that orange filter. So let's say I like that one. Then I could go and add contrast. I could do a whole bunch of tune image stuff, save my work. The point is to say there's way more going on in here than just that tune image box that we started with. So I think I'll switch, given the troubles this tablet is having, I think I'll take that as a cue to switch to Lightroom Mobile. But if you haven't played with Snapseed, it's free. Why not? Check it out. There's some just mind-bending stuff in here if you dig around under the surface. All right, talk amongst yourselves for just a second. Let me see if I can change to Lightroom. All right, so to change to Lightroom, turn this guy off a second. Okay, so right now I'm back in Lightroom, basically where I was yesterday. And I'm in the Lightroom desktop program. And so the way that Lightroom and Lightroom Mobile work, there is a Lightroom Mobile App, also available for both iOS and Android. you can go and download it. And the app is free, and free if you don't have an Adobe Creative Cloud subscription, if you're not paying them monthly. The free app will let you do some things, but not everything. Unfortunately, the first thing I'm going to demo here is something that they don't let you do. The app is, I think, sort of a teaser to get you to spend money on a monthly basis. And where Snapseed is a simple image editor, it does one thing. It makes our photos look better. Lightroom and Lightroom for mobile do a variety of things. I would argue Lightroom Mobile does 4 things for the serious photographer. It's a great way to show off your work. That's what I'll show you in a second here. It's a fabulous presenting tool, portfolio tool. It's a great way to enhance your images because it's built on the Lightroom framework. It is Lightroom, essentially. You've just translated for the mobile device. It's also a way to import and organize your mobile photos, what you shoot with your device, and it's a way to shoot photos. They have a camera app that I'll get to at the end. So the first thing that I think about Lightroom Mobile, the first thing I think, if you were to ask me, why do I want this? I would say, well, it's a fabulous way to walk around the city with a copy of your best images in your pocket on your phone all the time. To get your best images to your phone, though, we need to synchronize from one device to another. And this is where the semi-free part comes in. That synchronization from your Lightroom catalog on your computer to all your mobile devices is only available, unfortunately, if you're paying Adobe for a Creative Cloud subscription. So the reason I bring this up is, here in Lightroom on my computer, I have the ability to create collections. And a collection is just a grouping of photos. When I take and put a photo into a collection, so let me create a new one here. Let's say I create a collection for, say, how about Coast of Maine? And let's say that I want to walk around the city with photos that I've picked, photos of a place. When I create a collection as a Creative Cloud customer, I have this option that says Sync with Lightroom Mobile. If I enable that, the collection I'm creating exists in my computer, but it's also telling Adobe to send copies, not the whole file, not the giant raw file, but a copy of it to my iPad, to my phone, anywhere that mobile app is and is signed in. So let me create the collection first. And at first, there'll be nothing in it. And right now, I have syncing turned off for this demo. So first, let me add some photos in, and then I'll turn syncing on. So what I've created right now is this little empty container, right? It's not a folder, it's a grouping. It can hold files from this folder, files from that folder, files from this hard drive, files from that hard drive. But this is a plain old collection for those who are used to Lightroom, meaning we have to drag and drop the files that we want in here ourselves. So I'll go to, say, all photos. Now, for those who were watching my demo yesterday, I could scroll along looking for photos from Maine, but I'm not going to bother because yesterday I talked at length about organizing, and one of the ways to get organized is to use the map or keywords. So I'm just going to do a search in Lightroom for, say, the word Maine, because I've associated that word with some of these files. Now, rather than showing you all of my photos, I think I'll also say I only want to see the stuff with, say, a green label. So we have just these 20-some images. Oops. Just these 20 images right here. So photos like this, right? These are what I want on my iPad. So I can take one or all of these photos, and I can drag it onto that Coast of Maine grouping to say include this in that project, in that collection. So I'll drop one in there. There's one. I could go back. I could select a block of them. Oh, let me turn my filters back on. I could pick, say, a series with the shift-click trick from here to there and drop that group in there too. So let's say I've gathered up a bunch of these. Well, right now, I've told it that I want it to sync, but sync is not enabled. And to turn on the syncing is kind of a hidden button in Lightroom. That button lives up here at what they call the identity plate or the progress area. When I click there, a little menu will appear that says Sync with Lightroom Mobile. When I enable that menu, and assuming that I'm connected to Wi-Fi, these files, a copy of them, and these are all big Canon DSLR RAW files, a tiny copy is now being sent to my phone and hopefully to the iPad. So having enabled the sync, let me see if I can switch to the iPad, and I'll show you the results. And this little symbol, that little sort of like sideways arrow, that's the I am being synced badge, if you will, the marker that lets me know that this ought to appear on an additional device. So let's see. If I go here, yes, we have the iPad. Please work, iPad. So if I go into the Lightroom Mobile app, in a second, you'll see a little progress bar, three little dots at the top. A copy of those files just got sent to the iPad. They're right here. And you can see it's chugging along because it's adding them in. That was pretty darn easy, right? Compared to, say, for those who are used to iOS devices, getting your photos from the Apple Photos app into your iPad through the sync cable, and that was pretty easy. Now, why might I do this? Well, as a photographer, I like to, let's say I'm at a coffee shop. I meet somebody. I say, hey, I'm a photographer. They say, ooh, can I see some of your work? Nothing makes me happier than to pull out my phone or my tablet and say, sure, here, flip through them yourself. So let me pick, say, if we had just met, I might go to this portfolio collection. Now, in the mode I'm currently in, if I was to tap on one of these photos, I could change the settings on it. These are the Lightroom develop tools. Well, I don't want to hand somebody my phone or my iPad and have them make my photos look crazy. So there is a mode in here. It lives under this three little buttons in the top right. The mode is called Present. And when you go to Present mode, and this is the same on Android as well, when you go to Present mode, what you've done is disabled the editing side of the Lightroom mobile app for now. So now I can hand the tablet, I can hand the tablet to somebody else, and I can hand the tablet to somebody else. They can zoom in. That's the two-finger pinch move again. They can flip from photo to photo. They can see them as a grid. They can change the grid size, but they can't change the settings on this file. All they can do is view it. And so to me, this is super fun, because if we had just met, I want to say to you, yeah, I'm a professional photographer. And they say, can I see your work? And I hand them the device, because if they do the advancing, they're engaged with my photography. And the more they zoom in, right, the more they play with my stuff, the longer I can hold their attention. Now, what's so cool to me here is if I decide to change my portfolio, my collection, all I got to do is go back to Lightroom on the desktop, sub in the photo I want, sub out the photos I don't want. It will automatically synchronize them again. So literally, you could be updating what's on your phone, your iPad, on a daily basis without doing any hard work. Just drop it in the collection, and away it goes. Now, for a show like this, I might say want to run a slideshow. Or if I go visit my family, my brother-in-law has one of those elegant Apple TV things. So I could bring up Lightroom Mobile, I could connect to his Apple TV, and I could press this little button right here, that little triangle, in Present mode, and Lightroom starts a slideshow on his TV, the screen here, no effort required. Literally, you can walk around the city with a ready-to-go slideshow in your pocket 24/7. That's cool. And if you're curious, I'm going to stop the slideshow. There's actually even controls in here. Let me go back to Present mode. There are controls in here for how long the slides stay on the screen, some transitions between the slides. Slick. So first reason I think Lightroom Mobile might interest you is as a presentation device, a way to show off your work. Second thing Lightroom Mobile does is it gives us a way to edit our photos without sitting at the computer. And if you're not a subscriber, if you're not signed in to the Creative Cloud, the edits that you make, they're going to happen on the device, but they're not going to be sent back to your computer. If you're a Creative Cloud subscriber and you're signed in, the edits that you make on your computer are sent to the device, and the edits that you make on the device are sent back to the computer. That Lightroom for the Creative Cloud customer is Lightroom everywhere. So I can start work on a photo at home. I can leave the house, hop on the bus, commute into town, and continue working on that photo while I'm traveling. As soon as I get back on the Wi-Fi, the edits I made on the road are sent back to my computer. So let me show you a couple of edits here. So to get ready for today's demo, I sent over copies of some of my raw files. And so like, for example, this photo, a terrible photo, not something I am at all proud of. Because right now, I bet you're looking at the screen and saying, what is that? It's just murky, veiled gray. It is not a good photo. If I want to show its histogram, there's a little dot, 3 little dots in the top. If I tap there, there's a show hide histogram option. See that white histogram? Right now, this photo it has no inky black. It has no paper white. It's basically just veiled, murky gray. If we were in Lightroom Desktop, I would grab the black slider and pull it down. I would grab the white slider and say pull it up. Well, turns out I have those same sliders right here inside what they now call the Light tab. So I can take that blacks and pull it down. And you'll see how that's extending the histogram, say, off to the side. I can take the whites and push them up. And if I spread that dynamic range out, let me zoom in a little here. I live in Montana. When I was early in my career, I photographed a lot of skiing. Let me do a little adjusting with the shadows and the highlights. Here, we have a skier on about a 40-foot cliff. That's the photo I want you to see. This, see down here in the bottom left corner, that little before-after symbol again? This is the photo I actually shot, right? I have a skier going off, say, a 40-foot cliff. Will he live? I don't know. Will it, is it a good photo? Definitely not. But is it a photo that I'm going to want for, say, his hospital bills, for his family, next of kin? Definitely. And when it's all murky gray like that, you get no separation between skier in black pants with a gray hat against white snow. When it's all gray on gray on gray, he's basically invisible. Now, I could show you this same demo in Lightroom Desktop, because the logic here, what these sliders do, is exactly the same. And this is a copy of my raw file. Everything I'm basically used to doing in Lightroom happens here just as well, including when I was showing Lightroom yesterday, I showed the alt-click trick. I think so some of you are probably used to this. When we move our sliders in Lightroom, sometimes we want to know when we're blowing things out or blocking things up. In the desktop version, if you hold the Alt Option key and drag those sliders, you get a mask, an indicator when things are too bright or too dark. You get like the blinkies in the camera. Well, in the mobile app, it takes 2 fingers. You got to click on the slider with 1 finger, and then as you start to drag, you press a 2nd finger against the screen. That's the area in white. Those would be blown out pixels right now. I'm going to back this off to just before they're blowing out so that when I show that histogram again, see how the far right edge of the histogram comes right up to paper white, the right edge, but doesn't quite get there? That's slick, right? Now, it takes 2 fingers. It's kind of awkward mechanics, but to be able to adjust our raw files with real precision while sitting on our phone, our tablet, anywhere, I'm pretty impressed. Here, let me grab another here. This is a mural on the side of a building that I had the chance to photograph. Living in Montana, Montana is beautiful. For a landscape photographer, superb. But for art, not so much. So when I get the chance to come to a city like this, I'm all about it. Or this one is in Berkeley, California. This is a mural that's been painted on the side of a building. Well, we have buildings in Montana. We have paint. What I hadn't seen is that this is a actual like door. It's a fully functional door, and they had taken metal sculpture and welded metal over the screen of the door so that the art of the mural continues from paint to metal sculpt. Like, that's really cool to me. There's no building in my town with that kind of public art. So I shot this photo of this mural because I was pretty impressed. But when I look at the photo now, it has some obvious flaws. Amongst its flaws, its histogram does not quite fill the whole dynamic range. There's some dead space at the far right, so I don't quite have, say, paper white. There's nothing quite to inky black, so I don't have a strong shadow. Well, just like the last photo, those are going to be easy to fix by going to the lights command. And in this case, rather than wasting your time showing you, me dragging the sliders all over again, oh, thank you. Instead of dragging them all over again, I'm just going to tap on that auto button and let Lightroom set those sliders for me. Now, it doesn't always do great work, and I might not agree with what it did, but here's the before and after. That's before, kind of murky, not nearly as murky as the last one, but still a little veiled. After, so we have a nice, bright, if you'll pardon the pun, paper white, given that he's holding a newspaper in the painting. Much better. All right, so let's say the first thing we do, just like at the desktop, is we fix the exposure, the tonal range. Well, next, as I look at this photo, this sidewalk down here, and I'm going to use that two-finger pinch move again to zoom in. This sidewalk, it feels a little cold to me, a little blue. I'm photographing a mural on the side of a building, so that would be open shade, right? If I was thinking about it on the camera, I should have set the white balance not for daylight, but for shade, because if that sidewalk, it has kind of a cool blue pavement, is a little too blue. And then that color cast that we're seeing, that extra blue, it's not just in the sidewalk, it's affecting all of the colors in the mural. Now in Lightroom Desktop, the white balance controls are right up there at the top. In the new mobile interface, they've moved them into this color tab. Same controls, but now temperature and tint, vibrance and saturation all live in one grouping, which I actually think kind of makes more sense than in the traditional Lightroom where like white balance is at the top and then saturation is down below, and you kind of go back and forth. So for this photo, I'm going to go to, say, one of the presets. Let's say shade. So here's before. Blue sidewalk. Oh, come on. Blue sidewalk. Blue sidewalk. Too warm, I think. Too yellow. I could try one of the other presets. I could try cloudy. A little better. I could try daylight. Okay. But let's just tune it up myself. Now, when I'm color correcting, I don't know what the colors of the mural are, but I have a sense of the color of sidewalk, of pavement. I have a memory of it. So I'm going to adjust this slider myself. Too warm, too cool, somewhere about there, I think. Looks to me to be pretty close to what I would call sidewalk color. So let me zoom back out. Just going to double tap to zoom back out. Oop, there we go. Oh, there we go. Let me show you the complete before and after. Oh, come on. Before, after. Good enough? All right, so at this point, let's say I've fixed the basic stuff. I've got my white balance the way I want it. I've got my overall exposure the way I want it. But now I'm wishing that I'd had the chance to photograph this mural, say, 30 years ago, before it sat and cooked in the sun. Because the colors in the mural are starting to look a little faded. So I would love to make those colors richer, more saturated. I could certainly take the saturation control and crank it up. And that looks, well, frankly, that looks awful. right? Like the red of the shirt or the red of the wheelbarrow, those look good to me. But the yellow of the hands look cartoonish. So saturating all of the colors just doesn't do it for me. I'm going to reset this control by just double tapping on the slider. In Lightroom Mobile, anything you do, anything you move, if you make a mistake, double tap. Goes back to its default value. Instead of changing everything, I'm going to go up here to this little mix button. Now, for those of you who are used to Lightroom Desktop, this color mix panel that appears ought to be pretty familiar. This is the HSL panel in Lightroom Desktop where we can change the hue, the saturation, or the luminance, the brightness of a color one by one. It's the saturation in here that I'm really interested in. And now I have the chance to say saturate the reds without changing the blues. It's probably easiest if I desaturate. See how it's only affecting one part of the rainbow versus the whole rainbow? Again, that's super elegant to me. For working on a mobile device, to be able to say, I want my reds to be this color, not that color, amazing. Well, in Lightroom Desktop, there's a target adjustment tool, because sometimes I don't know what color things are. It's not that I don't know the color, it's that the computer and I don't agree that this is a red or this is a magenta. A place where the computer and I often disagree is on leaves. If I said to you, what color is a tree? You'd be like, he's an idiot. Trees are green, right? And you're right. But to the computer, most leaves are actually in the yellow part of the spectrum. So I can move that green slider usually. I don't get the results I want. Well, with this target adjustment mode, that's what this button here is. When I go over the photo and hold my finger, it tells me what part of the spectrum that area is. So as I tap around, it's going to identify what it calls those colors. So like this time, let's say I go to the red shirt, and now I'll say slide, let me go to the red shirt, and let me slide the saturation up on that one. Let me go to, say, the blue thing, and I'll slide the saturation down on that one. Oh, bother, that went back to red. To blue. Come on, target adjustment tool. Let me go to blue, slide down. Oh, come on. Sometimes tapping is, there are great things about the tap interface, and there are frustrating things about the tap interface. Let's go to blue. There we go. Now let me take the blue down. Let me push the red up. And with a little bit of tuning in here, I can change the colors in this painting so that these are the colors I wish I'd seen versus the colors the camera saw. That's what the camera saw. This is what I wanted to see. Make sense? Pretty slick to me that we have this target adjustment ability at our fingertips. Let me go with one more, and then we'll switch back to the computer a second. So let's say, let's do this one. Let's say I have a full color photo, but I want a black and white photo. Now in Snapseed a few minutes ago, I showed how you could tap those like red, orange filters when you're converting from color to black and white. Same idea in here. This time, I'm going to go to that color tab, only instead of tapping mix, I'm going to tap B and W. And now, I'll get this gray mix panel. And as I change these, so there was a red house in the middle there. Now, I'm going to say in the gray mix, to make that red house dark, come on, I want that gray house to go dark. 1 second. Apologies. B and W. There we go. I want this to go dark as we convert to black and white. I want this to go light as we convert to black and white. I want this to go dark and light so that I'm going from there to there, where that house gets contrast, gets punch, versus just the desaturated black and white, that I can tune this image to make a, say, high contrast, make a high contrast image in no time. Drop these guys down so that I get a really elegant black and white out of my color photo. Color, black and white. Now, if everything is syncing the way it should, if I swap over to Lightroom on my computer, what you see is what you should get when you come back. So that photo, when it updates, let me make sure it's syncing. In a second here, this photo, I hope, is going to have the same settings in the computer that we had on the iPad. Let's see. While it's syncing, let me show off. Well, for example, this one's already synced. Here's, say, the mural that we worked on a second ago. Here's the black and white. It's thinking about it. Here's the one we did first. You know, it hinges on the speed of your Wi-Fi. You're changing on one device, it's sending it to the others. Cool? So anyway, you get the idea. There's all sorts of enhancement that we can do on either platform, and it goes back and forth. Well, let's go to, say, the next part. Let's go back to sharing our work. So at first I showed that we could share by going to present mode. But present mode means that you and the person you're talking to are face-to-face. What if I want to share, but share globally? So if I switch back over to the iPad, hopefully, yes. Let's say I want to share one of these photos. If I want to share it via email or Instagram, within Lightroom Mobile, there's this little triangle, little box with an arrow pointed up. If I tap there, I'll get a menu where I can pick share, and let's just say I want a small copy. And obviously I could say mail on my mobile device. Lightroom creates an email-ready copy. I type in who to send it to, no problem. If I want a copy for, say, Instagram, all I have to do is say crop this guy square. So I'll crop it into a square. I'll go done. I'll say share small. How about a Instagram ready photo in no time? I don't know that it's a good photo. I don't know that I want to share this one, but that was cake. But that's sharing one by one again, right? What if what I really want is to take this whole collection of photos, this whole gallery of stuff, and send the whole gallery up, say, as a web page? So let me go back to my portfolio here. What I can do is I can tap on the collection. There's a 3 little bars. There's an option here that says share collection. And if I pick this one, I can say share, and what Lightroom Mobile is going to do for me right now is it's going to create a web gallery. Not just one photo, but a whole web space, a whole web page, hopefully. And if it works, I can say view on web, and what Lightroom has hopefully done for me is create that. If you were to go to the URL that I could send out, you would see all of these photos now online. That from desktop to web is a piece of cake. Without me doing any coding, without me doing any design. Let me prove it. I'm going to hop over to my web browser. I'm going to go to lightroom.adobe.com, and I've signed into my account, but this portfolio is now available online, and I've made it public, so anyone who I sent this URL to could go there, see it, and run their own slideshow in their own browser, from computer to web, piece of cake. Again, unfortunately, if you're not a Creative Cloud customer, you don't get that sync with the web. So that ability is limited for you. But this is the easiest way that I know to create a public web gallery. Right? It literally took me one button on my iPad. And then to go back to the iPad, if I wanted to share this guy, all I have to do on the iPad to share it on the iPad, go back to Lightroom Mobile. Once I've gone share collection, I go share link, and it gives me a link that I can slap and say an email. If I emailed that to you, you'd see my photos online in no time. Love it. I love the ease of presentation here because I don't know anything about web design. To do this myself, for me, impossible. Let me show one last, and then we'll do some questions. So I said there were three sides to this program. There's the organizing side, the showing off your work side. There's the enhancing side. There's also the images that are created on your mobile device. So far, everything I've showed you in Lightroom Mobile was shot with a DSLR camera. Nothing I've showed so far was shot with the actual iPad itself. So if I want to add in images from the device, there's a button at the bottom that says Camera Roll. Now, if I tap on that button, obviously it would let me pick what's already in there. But before I bring any images in, I'm going to go to the preferences in this app. Up here where there's that little LR button, I'm going to go into those preferences, and I'm just going to change a few things first before I bring in any photos. What I'm going to do is where it says General, I'm going to go in there. Now, if you're watching and playing along with an Android device, the menus are slightly different. You'll find the same stuff, you just have to go like one menu further. What I'm going to do in here is tell Lightroom Mobile that when I bring files in, I wanted to add my copyright, not a visible copyright, not a watermark, but I want my copyright added to everything I add from my iPad, from my phone. So I'll turn on this add copyright. I think I'll also tell it to fix the lens distortion if it can from the iPad camera. So I'll enable this lens profile correction choice. Basically, I'm just setting it up so that when it adds photos, it copyrights them and improves what it can automatically. Now, I could just go to Camera Roll and pick some photos. But there's a catch. The catch is, for now, Lightroom Mobile doesn't have a search box. We can't keyword search. We don't have a lot of organizational, that map module stuff within the mobile. So my advice is, before you add in any photos from the camera roll, from the photo galleries on Android, is to create a new collection, to use collections as your organizational system. So I'm going to tap this little plus, and I'm going to create a new collection. By default, Lightroom would think I want to give it the time and date that the collection was created. But what's that going to mean to me a year or two down the road? So instead, I'm going to type in, say, New York, because that will be something I remember down the road. So here's my empty collection right now, no photos in there. But all I have to do now is say, hit the Add Photos button, and I'll add from Camera Roll. Now I can pick what to add. But at first, and so as I'm adding them in, they'll be added to this collection, easy for me to find. They'll get my metadata, my copyright stamp. They'll have their lens distortion removed. Now, if I wanted to add one of these, picking out which one is a little difficult, unless I do that two-finger pinch move again. Let me zoom these in. I'll make them bigger, so I can decide that this is the photo I want, say, or that's the photo I want. That's if I wanted to be choosy. If I want to bring in all of them, you could tap one by one by one, but that's really tedious. Better method. Instead of tapping one by one by one, you could go up to the three little dots and go select all. Pick all of them. Alternative, I'm going to go deselect. If you want just a range of them, let's say I just want those from the twilight last night. If I tap on the first one, if I tap on the first of it and then swipe, I can swipe over the grouping I want to add. Or one last trick, and I don't think this trick is available yet on Android. If I press and hold on one of them, on the iOS, there's an option to say select range. So when I pick that one, it's already put a little check mark on the first one. I just have to tell it which one is the last one. So I'll tap the last one, it will pick from first to last. Pretty easy. The point here I'm hoping is to say, don't try tapping on all 1,000 photos in your camera roll to get these in there. So let's say I picked these. I hit Add Photos, and in just a second here, those photos were imported into my Lightroom library on this device. If I go back to the home screen, you'll now see there's a little collection with 8 photos of New York. Now, because I'm working on the mobile device, and because I'm signed in, those files are also being uploaded to my Lightroom catalog on this computer. To be clear here, when we sync from the computer to the device, we're sending a scaled down little preview, a preview only. But when we sync the other way, when you sync something you shot on the device, Lightroom is actually sending the full-size file over to my computer right now. And Adobe's doing something really clever here, because they know that, like for me, I'm going to lose this phone, break this phone, sadly, drop this phone sometime in the foreseeable future. Please not today. But the phone won't last forever. And if I lose the phone, I still want the files that were in it. Not a preview, but the full-size file. So by syncing the whole file, Lightroom is literally sending the whole file you shot with the iPad, the iPhone, over to your computer. When I go to the computer, we'll have every pixel that was captured here. Sweet. Well, that's an excellent question, sir. That depends on what format you're shooting on the phone. If it's a JPEG, then a JPEG is what you get on the computer. If it's a video file, if you shot a movie is what you get on the computer. And if you're shooting RAW files on your mobile device, if you've set your iPhone 7 to DNG mode, or this is a Google Pixel phone, if I shoot DNG RAW on here, then DNG RAW is what I get back there in Lightroom. So whatever it is what it gets synced as, which is really slick. What you see is what you get on all platforms. And on that topic, so that's a beautiful segue then into, but how do I shoot RAW files? And that's the last part of what this Lightroom Mobile can do for us. And this is the part that to be honest, I'm the most excited about. What I'm most excited about here is the way that the Adobe engineers have been working really hard on the camera app, the camera button that they've added to this program. Yeah. So right now, oh dear, I've got everything upside down. Right now, I'm showing you, I hope, the camera. There we go. I'm showing you the camera live from the app. Do you see at the top there where it says DNG? If I tap there on an iPad, on an iPhone 7, iPad Pro, iPhone 7, most of the more recent Google Android phones, here's an easy switch for what file format the app will shoot. JPEG is JPEG, DNG is RAW. So if I click a photo right now, I just shot a RAW file with this app. Now, to be clear, just because it's a RAW file does not make it prize-winning, right? Doesn't make it, RAW is a great format, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good photo. And also, it's still a mobile device. Don't think that you have the unlimited latitude of your Canon, your Nikon sensor. It's still limited by what it is, but it's a better file than I might have gotten otherwise. So, along with the ability to shoot in RAW, there's some other really slick things hiding in the app here. One of the slick things is this button in the bottom right corner. They call these the shoot-through presets. So as I tap on these, we're going to get a different look. This is the warm shadows look. This is the high contrast black and white look. I can tell it this is what I want, and then that's what I get when I shoot the photo. Slick. I'm going to go back to, say, the flat preset. There's also an exposure compensation in here. If I swipe my finger, oh, let me get rid of the presets. If I swipe my finger now, I can change the exposure, brighter, darker. Oh, that's because I'm holding one finger against the screen. Haha, this is hard to do, holding the camera. I need like one more arm. There we go. Now I can make it brighter, darker. And for a lot of cell phone photos, that's been a real challenge, to change the exposure live while we're shooting. Now, there are 3 modes in here. Right now I'm in the auto mode. If I go from auto to professional, what you'll see at the bottom, I hope, and I'm going to aim this, say, at something dark. Hopefully it'll stand out better. At the bottom, do you see where there's a, dear goodness. At the bottom, do you see where it says exposure, seconds, ISO? Let me aim it at something dark. There we go, much better. What you can do in here now is you can change the white balance, you can change the ISO, the shutter speed, or the exposure, or the focus before you shoot your cell phone photo. Right? We almost have DSLR type controls on our cell phone. Now, this part, I'm psyched to say, is free, even if you're not a Creative Cloud subscriber, but you can only shoot JPEG. The DNG option, not the camera controls, but the DNG, restricted. You know, they give you some, but not everything. But this is one of the best camera apps I know of in terms of control on the phone. What's missing in here is the aperture. And I can't fault Adobe for that, because the aperture for now on our mobile devices is fixed. Our cell phones don't have an iris the way our DSLR lenses have. So you can't fault them for leaving out something they can't physically change on the device. For now, the best we can do is to say set our ISO as low as possible, set our shutter speed to something that you could conceivably handhold, set your white balance, set your focus, etc. Let me reset all those. Now, recently, they've added one more button on Android, on iOS, but not yet on Android. If I go to shoot this photo, let me just tell it to focus, say, here. If I go to shoot this photo, and I change the exposure, let's say, way too bright, we can see it blow out. But when I'm close to too bright, it's hard to know when you're losing detail. Now, in the DSLR world, we would get like the blinkies after you shoot the photo. They've added this button here, it's a little triangle. They call it the zebra striping. See that zebra stripe? That's going to be blown out. It's giving me a live readout of where my exposure is too bright. So now I can adjust back down to where I'm, say, not losing any detail in the scene. Slick. I don't know of any other cell phone camera app that's giving you live exposure information. We're used to it in our mirrorless cameras. Some DSLRs will give it to you. But cell phone? Amazing. And if you're looking for that in the camera app, it hides under the 3 little dots where the triangle is. But so far, only available on the iPad, on the iPhone. Likewise in here, we can have our choice of, say, a bubble level. So when I want to get things good and level, oops, let me turn off the zebra striping. There we go. When I get it good and level, the line goes yellow, like for my, say, architecture shots. There's a choice in here if you want for compositional grid. Let's say that kind of composition. There's a choice in here for self-timer. Now, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I find that putting the iPad on a tripod with a mount like this one gives me really good photos. So this is, hang on one second here. This is my iPad mount, and I've bought the mount. and I put a plate on it so that I can put this guy on the tripod. On the tripod. You saw the Android tablet was there a minute ago. So a lot of times I'm out shooting now with this mounted on a tripod. I call it my view camera, right? And I'm really looking for an old school dark cloth, the hood, to throw over it. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking of myself as a glass plate photographer, only it's Gorilla Glass these days. Or, if this seems ridiculous, you can get a mount and a plate for your phone. So a lot of times I'll take these out with me, just a little mount, slide the phone in, phone goes on the tripod. If I set the ISO on the camera, the shutter speed, the white balance, I shoot a RAW file, I think I can get pretty good image quality there, right? That's become the professional standard for me of cell phone photography. And all it takes is a little adapter, little mount, little tripod plate, sweet. Let's see, one last trick on the camera here. So the last trick on their camera, and again, I think this is just amazing cutting edge stuff. The last trick on their camera is that there's a mode in here called HDR. If I go to their HDR mode, what the camera is going to do, oh, that's all sideways, isn't it? Well, whatever. There's an HDR mode. Apologies that it's sideways. If I go to their HDR mode, when I click the trigger, it's actually going to shoot multiple photos, 2 photos, and it's going to try and combine them together as a RAW file, as a DNG file. Let me hop back out of the camera, and I'll show you some results of this. So let's say, let me go back to here, because I think this is just amazing. So this is a photo I shot last night. Let me show what it is. Do you see where it says HDR in the top corner? This guy right here, this was shot with Lightroom Mobile. I had the camera, I had the iPad on the tripod, beautiful view of the city, and it shot, when I clicked that button, it shot 2 photos, and then it merged them together. And it merged them together so that I have this incredible range of tones that I wouldn't otherwise have. Let's say I go auto in here. That looks a little too bright. Let's lower the shadows, lower the exposure. But now, what I really want, I like the exposure I have on those flowers, but the city in the background's a little too bright. So just like Lightroom on the computer, I'm going to go and get that graduated filter tool. I'm going to drag the graduated filter down, just like I would on the computer, and I'm going to say to it, I want that background considerably darker. And let's just change the change that background down a bit. We'll make it even more obvious. Something about like this. Let's make that background a little colder blue, and make it a little softer. Let me hit done. Show you the before and after. This is the image that the camera actually shot. That's the image I get to in very little time. Now I think to see this right, I need to zoom in for you. There's plenty of detail in my foreground. There is a ton of detail and color back there in my background. For a cell phone photo, that's pretty amazing dynamic range to me. Pretty amazing level of detail. And all I did was put the iPad on the tripod, set the mobile camera to HDR mode, let it shoot multiple photos, and combine them together. And beneath the surface, it's using that same merge to HDR logic that Lightroom Desktop uses. And somehow they've been able to translate that amazing code to a mobile platform. Cool? Let's see. Is there more to show you? Always more. Yeah, just one more. Just to show this point a little further. This is let me show 2 photos here. This is a single image. And if I go and zoom in under that water tower, and I bring the shadows all the way up, you'll see that there is detail there, but that detail is full of noise. When I have to crank the shadow way up, we can see all that problem in there. Well, same shot, but in HDR mode. This time, if I bring the shadows way up, let me zoom in again, there is some noise in there. I'm not going to claim it's noiseless, but that's a pretty amazingly clean shadow for a cell phone. Cool? So if you haven't messed with this Lightroom mobile app yet, if for no other reason, I think you'll find its camera mode really, really fascinating. Let's see. Let me pause there, and because that's been a ton of stuff. Well, thank you so much, y'all. If nothing else, I hope this will get you to play with your phone. They are becoming amazing cameras, and both of these programs, Snapseed and Lightroom, I think, can take your cell phone photography further. Thanks.